delegates of ASEAN member states, distinguished dialogue partners from China, Japan, Republic of Korea, and United States of America. Ladies and gentlemen, good day. I would like to express my sincere gratitude for your attendance and participation in today's conference. I was hopeful of welcoming you to the Philippines. However, conditions did not allow us to do so. Once again, our annual event is held via video conference. Such rapid transformation in ASEAN operational procedures is one of the visible consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic. Despite that, I still look forward to meeting you in person as soon as it is safe to do so. Over the years, ASEAN has been active and prolific in fulfilling its role in shaping an open, inclusive, transparent, and policy-based regional network. Now that it is approaching its sixth decade, ASEAN is accelerating its community building and its cooperation and contribution to the joint efforts for peace, stability, and development of the international community. After all, a key goal of ASEAN has been to engage the major external power with interest in Southeast Asia in regular dialogues or conferences. Hence, at this ASEAN Plus 3 and USA Summit, we will exchange views on how to further promote regional cooperation and integration and overcome challenges and difficulties in order to successfully reach the goals set forth by our organization and plot its course for a promising future. In light with these hopes and ASEAN's bond as one, I look forward to productive discussion with all ASEAN colleagues and dialogue partners. Thank you for your attention, and may I wish all of you, ladies and gentlemen, the best of health.
Attention delegates, the House is now in order. Welcome to the 2022 ASEAN Plus 3 and USA Summit. I am Princess Dina Katipay and I will be the chair of this conference. We will address two topics. Topic A is about industrialization and climate change, and topic B is about intellectual property. However, before we set the agenda, we shall first enter a roll call. Please state your voting preference between present and voting. If you are present, you are allowed to abstain in the voting procedure. If you are present and voting, you are not allowed to abstain in the voting procedure. So, we will go alphabetically. Brunei Darussalam,
Present.
Cambodia,
Present at voting.
China,
Present.
Timor-Leste,
Present.
Indonesia,
Present and voting.
Japan,
Present.
Laos,
Present.
Malaysia,
Present and voting.
Myanmar,
Present.
Philippines,
Present and voting.
Republic of Korea,
Present.
Singapore,
Present and voting.
Thailand,
Present and voting.
United States of America,
Present.
Vietnam.
Present and voting.
Thank you, delegates. At this juncture, we will now move into motions or points. Are there any motions or points on the floor at this time? Please raise your hand. Yes, Philippines, you have been recognized. What motion or point do you raise?
Motion to set the agenda first to topic A, industrialization and climate change, followed by topic B, intellectual property.
Thank you, delegate. That is in order. We will now open the speakers list to entertain the motion. We will have 2 speakers for and 2 speakers against this motion, with each having a speaking time of 45 seconds. Those who wish to speak for the motion, please raise your hands. Thank you. Those who wish to speak against it, please raise your hands now. Philippines, Myanmar, Thailand, and Indonesia. You have been recognized in that order. Philippines, you now have the floor.
Philippines believes that the agenda should be set to topic A, followed by topic B due to the rising importance and intensity of industrialization and climate change. Human-induced climate change is the greatest, most pervasive threat to the world we live in, most especially in our region, Southeast Asia, which over the years was among the region hardest hit by severe weather conditions. This is a matter of concern to the international community because if no immediate action is done, People everywhere will suffer more of its dreadful effects. It would also be more difficult and expensive to avoid in the future. Hence, it should be discussed first, followed by topic B.
Thank you, Philippines. Delegate of Myanmar, you now have the floor.
Thank you, honorable delegates. Most esteemed chair, the topic of the hand are pressing concerns, although it's proving difficult to arrange them according to the priority. Myanmar believes that we must address first the topic about intellectual property. Myanmar feels that the discussion about climate change would be counterproductive, noting that a lot of debates, conference, and action has been done resolving this global issue. Intellectual property, on the other hand, is a topic that every country has been properly addressed and implemented. Hence, it should be discussed first. I held the rest of my time to the chair.
Thank you, Myanmar. Delegate of Thailand, you now have the floor.
Thailand echoes the statement of the Philippines that severe droughts, strong typhoons, extreme floods, and human health issues are reminders that Southeast Asia is one of the most impacted regions by climate change, and that despite those measures that have been made to resolve this issue, it remains a major threat that affects the planet from pole to pole. In fact, Earth's climate is undergoing changes never seen before by humans, and it is this rate of change that has scientists concerned. Thus, before delving into concerns such as intellectual property that does not really affect the world as a whole, topic A should be dealt first, followed by topic B. I yield the rest of my time to the chair.
Thank you, Thailand. Delegate of Indonesia, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The delegate of Indonesia finds it imperative that we explore the issues and concerns about intellectual property. We understand that climate change is a pressing issue, but it has always been a pressing issue. It is currently a pressing issue, but it will always be a pressing issue. On the other hand, in today's highly competitive global economy, businesses depend more and more on their knowledge and innovation, and these assets must be properly protected as it yields more immediate, beneficial, and tangible effects. Thus, Indonesia believes that this summit's time will be far better spent going to topic B first than topic A. I yield the rest of my time to the chair.
Thank you, Indonesia. Since the speakers list has been exhausted, we will now move into voting procedure. Please be reminded that you may not abstain during procedural votes. All those in favor of setting the agenda to topic A followed by topic B, please raise your hand now. Thank you. All those opposed? Thank you. You may lower your hands now. Due to the overwhelming majority of those in favor, this motion passes. Now that the agenda has been set to industrialization and climate change, followed by intellectual property, we will now move into formal debate. Are there any motions or points on the floor at this time? Please raise your hand. Yes, Cambodia, what motion or points do you raise?
Motion to open speakers list with speaking time of 1 minute per delegate.
Thank you. All those in favor of opening the speakers list with a speaking time of 1 minute per delegate, please raise your hand now. Thank you. All those opposed? This motion clearly passes. Please raise your hand if you would like to be added to the speakers list. Cambodia, Laos, Malaysia, and South Korea, you have been recognized in that order. Cambodia, you now have the floor.
Cambodia is aware that it is one of the most vulnerable countries to climate change. In fact, it has already started strengthening its climate change policies. It also has reaffirmed its commitment to United Nations Framework Conventions on Climate Change and the Paris Agreement. With this reaffirmation of the country to its international partners in fighting the climate change crisis, Cambodia wants to establish an ASEAN Green Deal with the aim to transform ASEAN region towards a green future, sustainability, effective use of resources, resilience, and economic competitiveness. Furthermore, in line with Cambodia's reaffirmation of commitment, the country also is looking forward for its international partners to take action immediately, as the climate change crisis is severely affecting the country's agriculture.
Thank you, Cambodia. Laos, you now have the floor.
Laos depends on natural resources for its development. However, this country too belongs to the most vulnerable countries to climate change, which make the country's development slower. Laos' major forms of natural resource utilization, such as rain-fed rice cultivation and hydropower generation, are very much vulnerable to the negative impacts of climate change. Laos has been strengthening its health system capacity to be climate resilient. In late 2019, Laos joined the project Building Resilience of Health Systems in Asian Least Developed Countries to Climate Change, implemented by the United Nations Development Programme and the World Health Organization. Although Laos has been strengthening its climate resilient health system for the people, Laos still struggles as its natural resources and environment is not safe and is slowly declining due to the rising climate change crisis of the world.
Thank you, Laos. Malaysia, you now have the floor.
Malaysia has always wanted for a cleaner and greener future. The country aims to be carbon neutral by 2050 at the earliest. In fact, Malaysia has been doing its best to implement its climate change policies and actions such as carbon pricing and carbon tax schemes, and climate change innovations like electric vehicles to be the one dominant on roads. Also, under the 12th Malaysian Plan, no new coal power plants will be built. Malaysia is positive and confident that the country will be able to contribute to fighting the climate change crisis.
Thank you, Malaysia. Just a reminder, we have one more speaker on the speakers list, and if the speakers list is exhausted, we will move to other motions. If you wish to be re-added or added to the speakers list, please send a note. Thank you. Republic of Korea, you now have the floor.
South Korea aims to cut its greenhouse emissions to 40% below 2018 levels by 2030. South Korea is also alarmed by the rising climate change crisis. The country believes that without urgent action, heat waves will last 153% longer, increasing the frequency of drought by 2050. The combination of coastal erosion and fiercer weather will also cause destruction to the country's economy, which stand to lose around 3.73% of GDP by year 2050. Even though Korea is the eighth largest emitter of carbon dioxide emissions, and that the country does not deny its economic ambitions, the country has still been doing its duty to fulfill its commitments in contributing to solve the climate change crisis through implementing its climate change policies and strategies, as well as climate change adaptation. South Korea is aware of the importance of this issue and that it needs immediate action.
Thank you, Republic of Korea. Are there any points or motions at this time? Please raise your hand now. Yes, Philippines?
Motion for a 9-minute moderated caucus with an individual speaking time of 90 seconds for the purpose of discussing Paris Agreement climate actions.
Thank you, Delegate. That is in order. We will now move into the voting procedure for this motion. All those in favor of moving into a 9-minute moderated caucus with an individual speaking time of 90 seconds to discuss Paris Agreement climate actions, please raise your hands now. Thank you. All those opposed? This motion passes. Delegates, we are now in a 9-minute moderated caucus with an individual speaking time of 90 seconds. Philippines, since you proposed the motion, would you like to speak first?
Yes, Chair.
Well then, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. So going further to this issue, Paris Agreement or Paris Climate Accords is an international climate change treaty that all countries here today as members of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change ratified or acceded to. Being part of this agreement entails the full participation of all parties to the goals set on climate change mitigation, adaptation, and finance. However, according to the 2022 World Population Review of Carbon Dioxide Emission, countries of China, US, and Japan are in the top 5. This is a major concern for developing countries like the Philippines because these emissions yield more climate hazards and a possibility of being diverged in the future. This devastates not only the property and the economy, but also the lives of the Filipino community. For its part, Philippines is doing its best to mitigate and adapt climate change through a variety of policies and programs. But these are not enough to combat a problem that calls for global action. Therefore, Philippines want to assess and address that all parties should triple their efforts with their policies and actions to reduce greenhouse gas emissions as it continues to rise and negatively affect the world and its inhabitants. Thank you.
Thank you, Philippines. All those wishing to speak in this moderated caucus, please raise your hands and keep them up until your country is recognized. We still have time for 5 more speakers. Yes, Brunei, you have been recognized.
All nations have a shared responsibility in ensuring a livable planet for future generations to inherit. Because of this and the country's recognition of the many dangers posed by the climate change to fellow vulnerable countries, Brunei Darussalam signed the Paris Agreement. Brunei is aware that it highly depends on fossil fuels for income and energy. However, it has already considered those upon making its climate plans and policies. One strategy is the increase of carbon sink through afforestation and reforestation, where last 2018, 11.4 million tons of carbon dioxide emissions were absorbed by the forest. Moreover, Brunei National Climate Change Policy aims to reduce overall industrial emissions, increase electric vehicle ownership by 2035, increase renewable energy capacity to 30% of total power generated, reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 10% through better electricity management, create a carbon pricing model, reduce municipal waste, mandate monthly and annual carbon reporting, and increase awareness and education on climate change. Thank you.
Thank you, Brunei. Japan, you have been recognized.
As might be expected, Japan is one of the world's biggest consumer markets with an industrious workforce, a well-maintained infrastructures, and technological advancements. Because of the heavy economic aspirations and growth, the country emitted a lot of carbon dioxide. However, Japan's greenhouse gas emissions are already leveling off for consecutive years. This is a manifestation of Japan's willingness to protect the planet in a way that shall not require the country to minimize its industries, innovations, and advancements. One of the major goals of the country, even under the administration of then Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga, is to be a carbon-free society by 2050. Decarbonizing energy-intensive industries while cutting national emissions is challenging, which is why our government has enacted a climate change law amendment to realize and continue working on this goal. Moreover, in order to build a positive feedback loop between economic growth and environmental conservation, Japan has developed its green growth strategy as an industrial policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Japan. Vietnam, you have been recognized. After 2 decades of sustained growth, Vietnam geared itself to be amongst the high-income countries by the year 2025. The biggest factor that fuels this path for Vietnam, according to the 2021-2030 Socio-Economic Development Strategy, is its natural capital, specifically the extensive stocks of agricultural, forest, and mineral resources. Due to its essentiality in steering the country's positive economic transformations, there is a need for its effective management and preservation, as well as proper climate change mitigation and adaptation. Because like the Philippines and Brunei, Vietnam is also one of the most vulnerable countries of climate change. It is threatened by the continuous rise of temperature and sea level that can interrupt and limit its economic development. On that account, Vietnam joined the Paris Agreement and honed its climate measures and strategies to avoid its catastrophic effects, but it also needs its international partners, the highly developed countries, to share this goal and make urgent and sufficient actions to combat climate change. It is unfortunate and alarming that many countries who have emitted the least carbon are bearing the brunt of climate change harsh impacts. On account of this moral obligation, may all countries share the same eagerness to lighten this burden for a sustainable future to come. Thank you. Thank you, Vietnam. China, you have been recognized.
Thank you, Chair. China's natural ecological system already experienced detriments brought about by climate change. And while China is aware that in recent years, it is one of the top emitters of greenhouse gases, the country has implemented myriad measures to eliminate its adverse priorities because it could ruin societies and industries affecting the overall economy. Hence, last 2015, China signed the Paris Agreement and as part of the treaty showed determination to be fully involved in global efforts. However, it is also important to take note that while China is one with other countries in this global fight, it doesn't mean that it has to stow away its path towards economic prosperity. China instead aimed and will continue to aim in developing climate change strategies. Under the Paris Agreement, China pledged to peak carbon emissions by 2060 and supported carbon reduction efforts through the launching of leading small group, creation of 1+N action plan and climate cooperation fund, transition to green energy and investment in disaster risk management, sustainable agriculture, and biodiversity conservation, among others. Thank you.
Thank you, China. United States of America, you have been recognized.
Thank you, Chair. Despite the complexities that happened in the previous administration, the reinstatement of the United States to the Paris Agreement indicates that climate change will always be its top concern and a key component of its foreign policy. Even as the country grows its economy, the United States still has a bold vision of tackling the climate crisis by building a clean energy economy that benefits all Americans and, in turn, the world. Major climate firsts have been made, including the creation of the National Climate Task Force with groundbreaking goals like reducing U.S. greenhouse gas emissions 50 to 52% below 2005 levels in 2030, reaching 100% carbon pollution-free electricity by 2035, achieving a net zero emissions economy by 2050, and delivering 40% of the benefits from federal investments in climate and clean energy to disadvantaged communities. The country will also continue to present a realistic and practical model in international climate debates that demonstrate how innovation and open markets lead to higher wealth, fewer emissions, and a more reliable energy supply. The overall point of China, Japan, and the United States of America is that we cannot guarantee a trickle down in the emission of greenhouse gases. But we are doing our best to lower it in any possible way without halting our economic development. I yield the rest of my time to the chair.
Thank you, United States. Since our moderated caucus has expired, are there any other points or motions on the floor at this time? Yes, Singapore, what motion or point do you raise?
Singapore would like to motion for a 15-minute unmoderated caucus to further discuss this issue with the other delegates and write draft resolutions.
Thank you. That is in order. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please raise your hand now. The motion clearly passes. Delegates, we are now in a 15-minute unmoderated caucus. You are now free to enter our breakout rooms to discuss the draft resolutions with the other delegates. Thank you. Sponsors, please forward your draft resolutions to be reviewed. Are there any points or motion on the floor at this time? Singapore, you have been recognized. What point or motion do you raise?
Motion to introduce draft resolution entitled Strengthening Paris Agreement Climate Actions.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Delegate. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. All those opposed? This motion clearly passes. Singapore, please read your draft resolution aloud to the committee.
Authors of this draft resolution are the delegations of Singapore, Philippines, Brunei, and Vietnam, and it is entitled Strengthening Paris Agreement Climate Actions, noting that ASEAN member states, along with China, Republic of Korea, Japan, and the United States of America have joined and reaffirmed their commitments to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change and the Paris Agreement, do hereby encourage every country to abide and intensify their climate policies and actions in accordance with the long-term goals set by the Paris Agreement in climate change mitigation and adaptation from local and regional levels to national and international levels. Expresses optimism that the climate change crisis caused by extreme greenhouse gases in the atmosphere can be alleviated and successfully confronted through the commitment and solidarity of every country to this global fight.
Thank you, Singapore. At this juncture, are there any other motions or points on the floor? Yes, USA, you have been recognized.
Thank you, Chair. The United States of America would like to move to add an amendment to the draft resolution saying that developed countries should be authorized to pursue their country's goal of economic development while taking significant steps in combating climate change through development of eco-friendly innovations and technologies.
Singapore, is this amendment friendly?
Yes, it is.
Noted. Then this amendment passes and shall be added in this draft resolution. Are there any motions or points at this time? Yes, Malaysia, you have been recognized.
The delegation of Malaysia motions to move into the voting procedure for the draft resolution entitled Strengthening Paris Agreement Climate Actions through a roll call vote.
The motion has been acknowledged. All those in favor of this motion, please raise your hands now. Thank you. All those opposed? This motion to enter a roll call voting clearly passes. Delegates, we are now in the voting procedure of the draft resolution entitled Strengthening Paris Agreement Climate Actions with the friendly amendment that has been passed. On that account, no one may enter and exit in the meeting. Please be reminded that delegates who stated present and voting cannot abstain in the voting procedure. Please state your vote when I call your name. Brunei?
Yes.
Cambodia?
Yes.
China?
Yes.
Indonesia?
Yes.
Japan?
Yes.
Laos?
Yes.
Malaysia?
Yes.
Myanmar?
Yes.
Philippines?
Yes.
Republic of Korea?
Yes.
Singapore?
Yes.
Thailand?
Yes.
United States of America?
Yes.
Vietnam?
Yes.
This draft resolution passes and shall therefore be referred to as the Resolution on Strengthening Paris Agreement Climate Actions. Are there any other motions or points on the floor at this time? Please raise your hand. Yes, Indonesia, you have been recognized.
The delegation of Indonesia would like to motion to suspend the meeting.
Thank you, Delegate. We will now move into voting procedure in this motion. All those in favor of suspending the meeting, please raise your hands now. Due to an overwhelming majority of those in favor, this motion passes. Thank you, delegates.